Hello and welcome to Triathlete Life, the podcast where we share the personal fitness journeys of everyday people. I am Ram, your host, and our guest for today is my good friend Vivek Vijayan. Fun fact about Vivek, he and I just trained for our first triathlon sprint last weekend, and the joy of training together and taking inspiration from other folks trying to achieve their fitness goals is what prompted me to start this podcast. So, welcome, Vivek. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today, and I look forward to sharing your story with the world. Can you start by telling the world a bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast, Ram. As Ram mentioned, I'm Vivek. I'm professionally a product manager. As I said, we met during an open water training session. And when he said that he signed up for a triathlon, something that I've been thinking about for a while, but never actually mustered the courage to sign up for one. I mean, I would say he gave me the courage to sign up for my first one, and we did. It's been a long fitness journey. uh, I've played multiple sports in my entire career, which, as at least as of now, culminated in to triathlon, and we'll see where it goes from here.
That's a great point. Like you said, when I signed up for the triathlon, you heard about it and kind of signed up yourself. One of the reasons we started this podcast is so that other folks see our craziness and jump into it themselves. Just by signing up and showing up is how you can kind of get yourself over the line. So yeah, we want to walk through the journey that you followed and see what other folks can learn from it. So, how was the experience?
The experience of training itself was wonderful. I don't think I was a strong swimmer in the sense that I could swim a few lengths of the pool. But if you tell me to swim 500 meters or 400 meters, especially in open water, because that was always my fear. In fact, when I met you, I was training for open water with the intention of overcoming that fear, so that if I'm going vacationing somewhere and I see a lake in front of me, I'm not scared to like go more than my waist deep or something of that sort, right? So that really, so that was the start, at least the swim part. I have not biked, I think, since my 12th grade. And that was almost 22 years back. Uh, and so that was a new muscle that I realized that I think I'd lost all this while. I had to get a bike. I had to then I had to figure out how to transport the bike. So I had to get a bike rack installed and a hitch installed and things like that. But then the training itself, I thought I've done half marathons in the past, so I think I was a little complacent about my running abilities. And it was just 5 kilometers. So I thought I could just push through it. But my focus was primarily on swimming because I knew, one, the fear of open water swimming, and two, the fact that I have to do 400 for 40 yards or something was daunting enough, right? So I spent a lot of my time preparing for swimming and biking. I think it was a wonderful journey, one that got me addicted, and one that makes me look forward towards doing much longer swims and much longer bike rides. And in the process, like I met you, I met Grace, and I plan to meet some wonderful people along the way that to enhance the camaraderie between triathletes, as you would like to call it.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned Grace. For the viewers, Grace was the third friend who was training with us. It was just amazing fun. We used to meet up every weekend to practice our swimming, and all of us finally managed to do the triathlon for the first time. So hopefully, we'll have her as a guest in our future episodes. Her story is super inspiring as well. So I'm sure you'll want to check her out when she's on the channel. So yeah, coming back to your story. So you said that you used to know how to swim a little bit, and open water was really the challenge for you. So how much in advance did you start practicing open water, and how did you overcome that sort of barrier?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think I ever have done before this. I've never done open water. I was primarily a pool swimmer. And I think before the day I met you, I'd taken just one class before that with a coach. Uh, and I think that got me over the hump, the proverbial hump, and that, okay, I can be comfortable not seeing the bottom of the pool or the lake, right? And still continue swimming. And I'm not panicking. it definitely helped that I had a wetsuit that was giving me the added buoyancy. So that was definitely a plus. I would be the first one to put my hand up and accept that. But regardless, I think the goal was that I'm not panicking when I see darkness underneath me, in a wide expanse of water. Um, and so yeah, that's what got me got me into swimming. And then from there, I met you, and I'm like, okay. And then you said you've signed up, and more inspiringly, you said you've just learned swimming. So I was like, okay, if that guy can do it, I'm sure I can push through too. Biking, of course, was I wouldn't say new to me, but because I had not done it for almost 1.5 decades, it was like I don't know whether I can bike. And I remember buying my first bike and first time riding my bike. The funny thing is, I just taught my son how to ride a bike, and when I got on the bike myself, I was a little shaky. uh, and fortunately, I overcame that pretty quickly, and forgotten to ride the bike. But then after that, once I got onto the bike, did a few laps of our community here, felt a little confident. We did the practice runs along the way at Lake Stevens, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. The scene's fine. The scene's okay, and that kind of got me more and more hooked to the sport. Running is, of course, something that, like I said, I've done in the past. I think I can, if I put some more effort, I can get back to it. I would say running is the least fun of all the sports that are there in the triathlon. Uh, but then again, it's an essential part of it. But I look forward to getting better at it as well.
Yep. Yeah, so you mentioned the panic about swimming, and I totally relate to that. In fact, a month before the triathlon, I had gone to a lake in Idaho where I was like, I need to get my miles in, so let me try and swim there. And I instinctively just couldn't do it because it was a new environment. The temperature of the water was different. I Every time I looked back at the shore, I used to panic and basically couldn't spend more than 2 minutes in the lake. So, what are the things that you feel when you were panicking? I'm just curious to know. And for other early swimmers, maybe you'll feel something similar too. So, um, yeah, what are the kind of symptoms you had when you were in the water for the first time?
Um, it's just so with me, like when I say panic, at the moment I could not see like ground of the earth underneath me. It was just darkness or like green nothingness. I was like, oh shit, this is not comfortable, and I would immediately get out. So I never got into a situation where it was like panic, and that I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm like hyperventilating. However, it like I mean, whenever I swim with a buoy, right? So I do take my breaks if I have to kind of rest on the buoy. But there are times when, probably because of my wetsuit and because I'm not so much used to it, my arms and my shoulders start to feel tired, and I can tell my stroke has gone for a toss. Like I'm barely making progress, and I'm tiring out. And you see the land further away. I'm like, oh my god, I've got to kind of push through it, or just wait. I know I'm wearing a wetsuit. I know I'll stay afloat. Just relax for a while. Uh, Give my arms a breather. Shake off that lactic acid a bit, and then go ahead. So I would say, panic wise, yes, panic is it's natural when you're entering or you're going outside your comfort zone, especially when you know that it can be harmful to you. But then you just have to get over it. Ensure that there is somebody with you,
Yeah.
right? Like for me, my first time, I felt confident because there was the coach who was on a kayak with me. So I knew that if something goes wrong, I can hang on to the kayak. So you need that safety net to ensure that you don't panic the first time you're doing it. And when you realize that you're actually fine, then you start going out with a group. Of course, you're carrying your life buoy and things like that. And when you're carrying that, you can just hold on to it, and in case you want to take a breather, and then gradually you gain more confidence, and then you can go out on your own a little bit. Of course, it's never a good idea to swim in open water by yourself because there's nobody watching you. uh, but still, at least you have the confidence that you can go with the group and you're not dragging the group behind, right?
Yeah. Yeah, great point. So I think the other thing that kind of acts as a barrier is, when you're going with the group, if you're the slowest in the group or the newest in the group, it kind of feels a little socially awkward.
Guilty.
Yeah, you feel guilty and apologetic. So did you ever encounter that, and what did you do about it? Yeah.
Yeah, so fortunately, I mean, so we had these folks who were doing 1 mile, and I was tempted to go with them, but I intentionally held myself back because I knew that I'm going to drag the group down, and I don't want to be in a situation where everybody's gone ahead and I'm like still struggling to kind of catch up. I knew that my stroke needs a lot more improvement. I need to figure out why are my arms getting tired so quickly, things like that. So there's more work ahead. My goal, at least for next year, is that I go for those 1 mile, 2 kilometer long swims. And I plan to spend the summer developing that muscle and the skill that's needed to do that distance. So that's what the plan is, at least as of now.
Wonderful. Looks like you've charted out your next steps in the fitness journey. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I think a lot about the swimming. Now let's get into the biking aspect of things. So I think one of the other things you and I discussed while training was buying a bike, right? So how did you decide what bike to buy? And
So I wasn't very sure whether I'm going to enjoy it, whether this is going to be a long term thing, and I didn't want to sink in. Like you can go crazy with buying a bike, right? You can go anywhere between $200 to $20,000. The bikes are available. So I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to like it. I want to try it out and see how this goes. Having said that, I still want to buy a reasonably decent bike, right? Not something that is going to give way in between or have all sorts of issues, or something that I can't use it in case I decide I don't want to go competitive with it. I just want to be a casual rider. So I decided to buy something cheap from Amazon, like something for $350 or something. I think it was fairly decent. It was not carbon fiber. It was an aluminum bike. The gears looked fine. And after buying this bike, I was doing a whole lot of research into, okay, what is the difference between like a high end bike and a regular, very beginner kind of a bike. And to be honest, at least for beginners, there isn't a whole lot of difference. Yes, quality is better, but then for our level, like we just beginners, there's a whole lot that we need to improve our stamina, our position, stuff like that, that we can easily do on a cheaper bike. And then once we are better, we can graduate onto a more expensive carbon fiber bike. So that was my thought process behind the bike that I bought.
interesting. Yeah. And you mentioned that you just taught your son to bike as well. So on the family side, like how does preparing for a triathlon kind of sort of mix with your family life? Is that something that was difficult to
Yeah,
manage? Or
fortunately, my wife is obviously fairly supportive of this. And the other thing is, typically, when I try to take time out, it's in the early mornings when my family is still asleep. So that's the thing where you got to figure out when do you have time. You may have to wake up early, especially in climate like Seattle. Well, it's summers now, so it's fine. But very soon the rains are going to come, and they're going to stay for the next 8 months, right? So, will you find the motivation to do swimming, outdoor swimming? Well, outdoor swimming is pretty much, I mean, unless you're those crazy people who find going into a very cold lake and taking a dunk in it. I'm not. I don't think I'll be doing open water swimming. I don't want to be biking in the rains because, well, I'm pretty much touching 40, and if I fall, my recovery process is going to be a whole lot slower, and that's not fun. So what do we do? And so you have to find times early in the morning. Typically for me, that's what works best. If I can spend like half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour at best, and train one discipline. It's typically cycling or running. For some reason, I'm not able to get myself to a pool early in the morning. And so I keep pool training for evenings. Uh, so yeah, I think you got to figure out times when you got to separate, time for your training. And it's typically the time when the family is asleep and they don't feel that, you're away from them and you're not doing something that you're supposed to be doing.
yep, yep. Yeah, I think, how has the journey been for you, like by age? You mentioned you're touching 40. Has fitness always been a part of your life, or has this been something you picked up late?
I think so. I mean, my dad was in the army. So, right, I think my sports, at least in the initial stage, evolved with the sport that my father played. Like being an Indian, I think every cricket kid, at least back in 90s, and I think we both are 90s kids. We start off with cricket, what we call as gully cricket, right? And then dad was into tennis back then, so he got me into tennis. And then from tennis, there was a time in like early 2000s where in army cantonments, there are places where you have stables, horses, you have show jumping and stuff happening. So I got into riding horses. I learned that. But unfortunately, that requires a whole lot of infrastructure and horses and stables and things like that are not available everywhere. So that fell by the wayside. And then my father took up golf. So obviously, I followed his footsteps and I took up golf. And that was fun. Like I'm fortunately I can hold on my own if I go to a course, and at least I can get my drives going straight. And then from there, I think there was a big hiatus because I was in the merchant navy, and I was out sailing for several months. And then when I come back, I've got my courses and stuff like that. So there was a long gap where the only physical exercise that I did was probably running. And that too, I wasn't a very good runner. I would like gas out at like 5 kilometers and stuff like that. Um, then I would say in mid 2010s, I got really interested in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's a form of a martial art. I never thought that's something that would attract me, so I stuck with it. I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu right now. But then, at
Awesome.
this age, gradually, like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it's a highly intense activity, right? And you burn out pretty fast, and along the way you suffer a lot of injuries, and gradually the appeal starts to kind of wane a bit. uh, and so I was like, and then that's what got me into swimming, because swimming was one activity that you can do for a very long time. It's not very taxing on your body. It doesn't lead to injuries typically. But then it's a lot about technique, right? And so while I could do a few laps of the pool, I could never do it continuously. So I started watching a whole lot of YouTube videos to see how I can improve my swimming, and that improved a bit. Like that got me to a point, but then I felt that I was plateauing out, and that's where I decided to hire a coach to kind of help me, overcome the barrier there, or the proverbial wall that I'd hit. And so with swimming, you obviously meet people who are into triathlons, such as yourself, and that's what got me to triathlon. Now I've got to add biking and running to my repertoire in order to be a good triathlete. So I like the transition from being a triathlete to a triathlete.
Yeah. Given your history of such a variety of sports, you should probably graduate to like a decathlon or something, man. Like, leave the triathlons for people like us who are trying to get past. It's interesting you mentioned tennis, because I love playing tennis as well. In fact, I was training for my first marathon last year, and I was doing tennis on the side as well. I joined like the local league. I ended up stopping tennis because having my marathon training and tennis training in parallel became just too taxing on my body. And the sprinting and side to side movement of tennis was taxing my body in a very different way compared to the volume of running. And so I ended up pulling back from tennis. But yeah, if you're ever up for a tennis game, we should
Oh,
certainly.
well, absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, it's been ages since I played.
yeah,
I ran into another one of my friends who they've bought this machine that shoots the balls across
yeah,
the
yeah,
court, and so he has invited me over. The thing is, and the flip side of doing too many sports is that you can't, like, you have to focus, right?
yeah,
I mean, tennis is like, I think you're in the same boat as I am. Every sport is wonderful.
yeah,
It's just that you've got limited time and you've
yeah,
got family to look after, and of course you've got your job to take care of, right? So I
yeah.
think you got to pick your battles. So right now I'm in a position where I'm interested in triathlons, but then I'm also like I stopped doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for a while to kind of focus on this. But Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or any form of martial art is actually a pretty taxing sport in that, like example, tennis or triathlon, as long as you're doing the sport, that's as good as practice. But any martial art, it's just technique. It's also weight training and strength training and stuff like that. So it adds a whole new dimension. But I mean, it can be argued that strength training is something that will augment your performance in all spheres or any sport that you want to do, right? So, but then Brazilian Jiu Jitsu requires that extra strength. And if you're trying to go for that, then something has to give. So you have to kind of prioritize what is it that you want to focus on, at least for a certain period of time, because only then will you feel that you're improving. Otherwise, you stretch too thin to make any meaningful progress anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reason why I ended up stopping tennis as
Yeah.
well. I mean, I might casually play every now and again, but not, I'm not part of the leagues or anything
Right.
anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I think triathlons are
Other thing.
intense enough. Yeah, I think there's enough to be done there. So yeah, you talked a bit about injury management and taxation on the body. So how's that journey been for you? Have you had to overcome injuries to perform the triathlon or keep fit? Yeah.
I mean, for triathlon, I think I fortunately did not suffer any injuries.
Yeah.
And I was. I mean, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, you get injured pretty much all the time. It's like you get injured, you wait for some time, and you get back, you again get injured. Something or the other keeps happening. So yeah, that's a journey. That eventually you're doing enough of triathlons. If you're, for example, in swimming, if your technique is wrong, you might get injured. You might get injured falling off a bike, right? And typically running, people get injured. I believe you had an injury just running. It's important that you are following the right technique, at least with swimming. If you're ensuring that the technique is right, and that's where strength training really comes into play, right? You have to focus if you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Strength training is an important component, not to do your moves and techniques right, but to avoid injuries. If you're not strong, you can easily get injured, and the recovery time is a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, for triathlons, if you're not strong, if your muscles are not strong, you can get injured a lot easier, and the recovery time is a lot longer.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to avoid injuries is ensure that you're doing adequate weight training, regardless of the discipline of the sport that you are into.
Yep. Yeah, that actually leads me to my next question, which is, we've picked an event and done a triathlon, but are you planning to? What's next for you after this event? Are you doing another one, or are you going to
Yeah,
continue? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So at least this year, I would say I want to focus on improving my biking and swimming more importantly, because the next one is going to be, my desire is to graduate to an Olympic distance triathlon, right? That's the natural progression from a sprint. Ironman, depends on the time commitment. Like, am I willing to spend 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours a week for an event? I don't know at this point. And moreover, this is not something that it's like a passion or anything. I'm doing it for fun, right? I want to make sure that I have something, one, fun. Two, I want to make sure that I can enjoy my life well into my old ages, right? And so this is one activity that'll help me do that. So yeah, it's important that you figure out time for whatever that you're focused on, uh, and make the best of what's available. So what's next for me? What At least in the immediate future, I want to improve my technique, continue working with my swim coaches. I know I've got a long way to go there. Again, same with biking, right? I want to make sure that I'm moving up on my average speeds. Uh, and running, of course, I want to ensure that I'm moving up on my average speeds. And then I'm hoping that maybe next year or next season, I want to do a long distance open water, like a 2 mile or something, or a 5K. Uh, that's my secret desire in my mind, that I want to do a 5K. I don't think I'm at this point crazy enough to even think about a 10K. There is a 10K, by the way. But I want to start with the 5K. And then with biking, we'll see where it goes. I believe there are these, bike rides from Seattle to Portland and Seattle to Vancouver. I don't know if I'm there yet. Uh, but I will continue doing what I can, and my focus is going to be just doing triathlons and preparing my body for that. Um, but yeah, that's what my intention is.
That's awesome, man. Super inspiring. I think, look, you're all well on your way to your Olympic. I've signed up for an Olympic in next August, so I'm taking a bit of a beat after the sprint we just did, but I do hope to start training for that soon because I have way longer way to go compared to you.
No, I mean,
So
you got the fact is it's a good thing that you set the goal and you
yeah,
set ambitious goals. That's good. And that forces you to become that much better in
yep.
a time bound manner. So that's great goal setting, I would say.
Let's hope so, man. There's a fine line between great goals and crazy ones, so let's hope I get over the line. Cool. So, I mean, yeah, to sort of round it up, any advice for others who are trying to consider a triathlon and might be getting a little scared about it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is at least give it a try. I mean, I think everybody knows what their physical limitations are. And the best part about a triathlon is that there is no competition with somebody else. It's always with yourself, right? And you're always trying to improve to a point where then you can aspire to at least finish on the podium within your age bracket. So it's like it's always a competition against yourself. So go for it. I would say, make sure that you have done enough practice. Don't just be blind about it. You have to obviously put in the effort and take it slow, because I think these are sports that you can do well into your old age. We have seen 70-year-old athletes were doing sprint triathlon, which is fairly inspiring, and at least that gives you the confidence that you can do this even at the age of 70. uh, I would say take the plunge and don't worry about what your time is. Just in the fact that you completed gives you the confidence to take you further.
Wise words, man. Yep, and that's what we call a triathlete. Anybody who's trying is an athlete in our view, and that's the reason for this podcast. Thanks so much, Vivek, for sharing your story and sharing your background. Hopefully, some viewers out there find it relatable and motivates them to take the plunge as well. So, thanks so much, and talk to
Absolutely.
you soon.
Having me, and we'll meet soon. Take care.
Yep. Bye bye.
Bye.